density is allowed. And so Donna and Shannon had put together some great design standards just as a starting point, and that's what we were gonna workshop, is thinking through some of those design standards. So I don't think that is something that's going to be quick.
Melissa, is it design standards or just density or mixed use? People are saying it's too dense, is that what I understand?
Right, so in the mixed use code that's approved right now, it allows for up to 20. And we kind of, I mean, as we workshopped that before, we discussed kind of not having a lot of design standards in mixed use yet, and you know, just kind of letting creativity come through and see how it will go for a couple of years. But so we don't have any property zone mixed use yet in the city, and so some council has directed us to revisit that. So what has come up is the density, but then as staff, we look at it and I mean, we don't know that the answer is just changing the density number, but maybe having like some design standards that you have a base density, and then to get to those higher densities that staff's being told you need to have a high quality development. Like maybe to get to those higher densities, you have to provide certain amenities to get there. So that's what we've put together in super draft form, and wanted to talk through, just because we feel as staff a little bit stuck right now, because we have this great zone code that we recently approved, but we don't have any property zoned that, so we are essentially stuck, I guess. Yeah. So.
Someone give me an estimate. How long? Is it gonna be an hour, 2 hours, 15 minutes?
Well, I gave it to Shannon in 15 minutes, but she wasn't giving me a ton of input. So what I'd like to do is just kind of run through it. You guys can give input and stop me where you want, which will obviously lengthen it a little bit. But what I want you to do is put your thinking cap on a little bit. Let us show you kind of what we're thinking about. If you think it's going too long, we'll just stop it and move it to the next one. The only reason that I kind of wanted to bring it forward is because we have to get off of stuck.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty understandable.
And I can honestly tell you that the July 12th meeting is going to be as big a full house as we had tonight.
So we won't be able to.
So we won't.
An empty meeting coming up.
Right, unless we do
There's
like,
really not.
there isn't.
I'm personally fine with our half an hour.
So I'm not trying to be, you know,
Okay.
it's just, we are where we are.
Well, let's go. If you proceed, and I guess we will, if we're still going at 8:30, we're gonna revisit this. I think
Okay.
we're just getting tired.
That's fine, I totally get it. I've been here a while too, so I get it. So just as a matter for folks that are, and I didn't know if it was just Sandra, or we're gonna have a whole room full. So just as a matter of interest for everybody that was here, when we did the code text amendments, we had workshops with planning and zoning, we had workshops with the city council, we had public hearing with planning and zoning, public meeting with city council, we had comments that we requested from local developers, from residential, non-residential, property owners, architects, engineers, realtors, agencies, and utility providers. None of the code was done in closet. It was all very open, this is what I'm trying to say. The future land use map is in your packets, kind of at the end. Shannon put that together for you. And the mixed use code is what we've kind of been tasked with tonight, which is the areas in purple. It's important to note that if the area that's in purple is in a planned unit development, the planned unit development that was approved, their exceptions and density requirements, what have you, those are already approved with the planned unit development that was approved. So like this area that's in purple here in Hayden Canyon, it really just reflects kind of part of the area and the PUD that was already previously approved. Same thing with Hayden North, the same thing down here in Honeysuckle Glade. As just examples, those are PUDs that have those components that really aren't reflected in this zone design code.
North on Lancaster, would that be more, if it was just zone normal, would that be more of a mixed residential as opposed to mixed use?
Hayden North, yeah, because their lots are too small to be.
Correct.
Say R1.
Okay.
Correct.
It would be more of a mixed residential and then mixed use for the
Correct,
multifamily.
in Hayden North, that's correct. Okay, so going back to just the definition, in the zone Code says that a mixed-use zone provides for both residential multifamily of 4 dwelling units or more in a building structure, and commercial land use types either together or separate, creating that flexible environment for either one or the other or both. We wanted to be really flexible with that zone. So why do we have design standards? Well, we want consistent expectations of the developers. We want consistent application of the code section. We want the developers to understand that they have some consistencies in the process. But we also want flexibility in design, because boy, their architects are gonna get way better than I'm ever gonna get at code, or many of them that we looked at. And then we also want that compatibility of uses that goes on in the mixed use. So you were sent some information prior to this workshop with some examples of existing multifamily units up Government Way. So I'm gonna go through those, but I have 5 questions that I want you to ask yourself as we hit those. Do you notice these each time you drive by them? Do you physically notice each one of these multifamily areas as you're driving up Government Way? Do they stand out or do they blend in? Do they create too much traffic? Do they create too much noise? And are they either incompatible or compatible with their surroundings? Because that's what we're trying to create, that mixed use zone. So you're driving north on Government Way and you pass the library, and on the left-hand side of the road are the Matthews Apartments. Just before you get to Paul Bunyan. There's 16.68 dwelling units per acre. That's that 17-ish number.
It's on the west side?
It's on the west side. Yeah, here's Paul Bunyan. They're directly south. 3 buildings. Keep going north, past Honeysuckle. You see Sargent's, and straight down Sargent's Drive are the Hayden crossings. They're 11.61 dwelling units per acre. They're also only 1 story, so they're not multiple stories. And then, as you look you pass just City Hall and you look to the right and you see the Country Ridge Court. They're at 13 dwelling units per acre.
They're the ones that are just to the north of us, right?
Just to the north, between us and the parking
Well
lot.
recessed off the.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you keep going north and you see the UPS store on the left-hand side of the road. And the next immediate driveway goes back to the Sarah Street Apartments. Those are 13 dwelling units per acre.
Behind that little pie place?
Between the pie place and the UPS store.
Yeah.
And
that's
back.
where the road goes back.
Yeah. So then, pretty much directly across the street from the pie shop, which opens when?
Wednesday.
23rd.
There you go.
Be there.
Right directly across the street are the Willow Tree condominiums, and they're 16.6 dwelling units per acre. Keep driving north, you pass the hotel on the right-hand side, and the Blue Plate on the left-hand side, and the new jiu-jitsu place on the right-hand side, and you hit the Lakeview Village Apartments. And they're at 16 dwelling units per acre. And oh, by the way, they have a playground in the front yard, right here with a play structure in the middle of that green space. I saw kids playing on it the other day. I was like, wow, they have a playground.
I noticed more because they don't have trees in front.
So here's the aerial view that we just drove down that are all along Government Way that exists today. So then, just as a kind of a matter of perspective, if you're on Kathleen and 4th Street, these are those new ones that kind of, came up out of the ground and everybody went, whoa, what the heck? Those are 36 units on 2.24 acres, or 16 units per acre.
These are somewhere else, but
That was in
Right.
Coeur d'Alene,
that's
right by
Coeur
the-
d'Alene, yeah.
It is, but I'm just trying to give you kind of a,
What's the one by Capone's? Right behind
It's
it.
the same builder, and it's 16 as well.
So it's exactly the same.
Yep.
I thought so.
Did the math afterwards, it's 16.
So this is on
24 units on an acre and a half.
Hanley and Ramsey, and you all know where the Maverick Station is, because we all see the Maverick Station.
Pokeworks.
It's 294 units on 17.3 acres, which is 17 dwelling units per acre. And if you took the commercial out and you had 294 units on 15.7 acres, it's 19 dwelling units per acre. Just to give you some perspective. Again, think those 5 questions, you know, perspective.
When they built that, did they also have to have that commercial frontage? Is that?
It's in
Totally
Coeur
separate.
d'Alene, so
We
it's
don't know.
totally separate, I
think
don't
it
know.
is a big PUD, so I don't know what their requirements were, but we got those dwelling, or that density from the Coeur d'Alene planners.
And then you'd kind of seen this of examples of some apartments and multifamily that we looked at when we went on a field trip to Liberty Lake. This is a really cool park. If you haven't had the opportunity to drive over there, you need to check that park out for no other reason. But the cool cottages and then the apartments and the houses and the little corner node, it's a really good example of all of those. Anyway, I digress. 12 units on 0.85 acres or 14 units per acre. So kind of using that as a backdrop. We kind of took a back step. I backed up, said, okay, well, what do we want to see out here and how do we want it to look? So we kind of looked at 2 things. At the beginning of the design code that I gave to you, I threw out an MU1 and an MU2. An MU1 is kind of a less than 5 acres and not on an arterial. And an MU2 is a more than 10 acres and on an arterial. And I'm not sure beyond that what design standard fits with one or the other, because to me it kind of applies to both, so I'd really want kind of direction from you guys to figure out what you're thinking. We wouldn't require permits. We have some of them being exempt, just like we do in other things. If you're doing an interior remodel, you're not changing anything. If you're doing normal or routine maintenance, like you're putting new roofing on or new windows in or siding on, that wouldn't require it. If you have any construction that doesn't already require a permit, because this would work with the building permit, temporary structures wouldn't. And then in most of the code, and I gave you kind of a laundry list of code that I kind of gleaned from to create this and the stuff that I sent you, wholly residential buildings like a 4-plex or a 5-plex with 1 building on 1 lot would just go through as a normal residential site plan or non-residential site plan. It wouldn't require you to have any of the other design features that we're proposing. And an example of a 4-plex is like just south of Hayden Avenue on Reed Road. There's a 4-plex back in there that most of the time you don't even notice it, that it's there. Or at the end of Kyler Avenue off of Reed, go all the way down to the end, and there's a 4-plex down there across the street from a duplex.
So Donna, what you're saying is that you're proposing that these things are exempt from the design standards.
Correct.
So they're just like a regular,
Just a regular building.
it's just one on 1 lot.
Can we back up just a minute? I mean, we're talking about design standards. And the reason we're talking about that is because the council has asked us to take another look at the density of 20 dwelling units per acre. So are design standards gonna get us to where the council needs us to go?
I think so.
And
maybe.
expand on that.
We're hoping.
I guess I'm trying to understand.
Well, I think so, because the base, what she's got here is that the base allowance is 15. So unless you started adding amenities, you couldn't, and then the maximum that she's got here in the draft is 18.
Very draft.
So it's, all of the options are lower than the 20 that we have today.
And I'm not advocating that 15 is a great place to start. It was just a number that was thrown out at a council meeting. The last one and the one before that, I guess.
Well, and when we did our research during writing the first code, we'd heard that successful multifamily is somewhere between 15 and 25 dwelling units an acre. So going less than, we didn't hear from anybody that less than 15 was successful, so.
And going up Government Way, you're kind of, right in there. That's kind of 15 is kind of right in the middle of the high and the
So
low.
I guess what I'd like to do maybe is a place to start is, let's get the consent of the sense of the commission.
Okay.
If, right now it's 20, we asked us to look at it. Donna's presented some information, so is 20 the wrong number? It's too much, it's too little? Anybody have an opinion on any of this?
I think it's about right.
You think 20's about right? Mary, what's your thoughts?
as you show the examples, I like the 16, 17 better
Okay.
than the 20.
I think the difference, without cutting somebody off, I apologize. I think the difference isn't so much the density, but how it's done. You know, when you started going down in government, no, the answer to this question is no, I don't notice them. They're all way off the beaten path. They don't create where you look at the one on Ramsey.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a bit of an eyesore for Hayden. It works for where it is, cause it's flat, there's really nothing there. Would I want that on Government Avenue? Hell no.
No way.
Right, that's why we put it in there, cause you can tell what you like and what you don't like, kind of from the
So I think the
pictures.
success of us doing higher density in Hayden isn't so much the design per se, but more of if you can recess it, if you can put it back where it isn't creating the issues that make people cranky, like it being ugly and in front of their, you know, not right next to their nice house. I think that's what's gonna make it successful for Hayden.
Okay, which maybe design standards would be applied to that.
Right.
What's our height restriction on mixed use?
Is it 35 feet?
45 feet,
45?
45 feet.
45 feet?
What are those ones on Ramsey? That's 45
They're 3
feet.
stories. Are
They're,
they 3
they're
stories?
3 stories, I don't know what the height of them
They're
is,
big.
they're 3 stories.
45 feet is the height of commercial, and they're in commercial, 45 feet is the maximum.
Brandon, what's your thoughts?
Yeah,
On the 20.
I agree with Ellen. The 20 is just a random number that's been thrown out. We didn't see a single example of one that was 20. I don't know if 20 is right or 14 is right based off of what I've seen. So I'm sure that if we had the right design plans and the correct look, the number is gonna be less of an interest.
Right.
When it comes
Okay.
down to it.
Sean, 20?
Yeah, it seems to be, I mean, I think people hear 20 and they think it's just packed in there, but when you see examples, so I think, as you said, if they're done right, you don't even notice them.
And Ben, what do you think?
I just agree with what Sean said. I mean, if it's set back like that, no, I don't notice them going up there, but I totally agree with what Alan said. If that monstrosity over on Ramsey was, you know, yeah, that's not what we need in this town.
And it's
Sorry?
like the trees were bigger, if you didn't notice it.
It stares.
Consensus is pretty even on here. The ones that you showed in the example, as it's just been said, you don't even notice half of those at least if you're going up and down government. I mean, they're back behind tree lines, they're behind other businesses. The one way up further on government and then the one down by the eye doctors are the only ones that I even notice when I drive it. So, I mean, yes, design and push back with good landscaping put in front of it, I think it's great. I don't mind a 20. I think that would be a top end.
Alright, I guess my thoughts on it is, you know, you showed us some there in the neighborhood of 20, you know, nothing quite got there, but 16, 17, so, you know, I think the 20's in the ballpark, maybe slightly high. You know, I heard what everybody said about pushing it back so you don't see it kind of thing, but maybe another thing to consider is, you know, there's one with 16, but there's 4,000 of them. You know, just the total magnitude of what's in there, that's a different thing than there's 16 dwelling units per acre in 1 acre, so there's 16 of them. So maybe we should give some thought to limiting the total number of units in an area, if that's something to think about,
That's smart.
as opposed to, you know, the density of it.
So we like a lot of them down government because we don't see them, but they're not also backing up to our yards. And we like them because they have the landscape and they're pushed back and they're kind of hidden. So what if part of the design factor was that kind of buffer all the way around? So that the homes that they backed up to also didn't feel intruded upon. I know how we feel in our subdivision when we've got, you know, we were promised that the center section was all gonna be single story and the outer section of the subdivision was gonna be where the 2-story homes were. Well, that's not how it worked out with the builder that I have from my neighborhood. And we have single story on one side predominantly and predominantly two-story looking down. Same issue that the people on tonight have, is the homes looking down in. Imagine if that's an apartment building that's 3 stories high. Wouldn't you feel better about it if there was a buffer all the way around, not just where
That's
there's
what we
normal
were thinking.
traffic?
Too, so we put, that's why we kind of put this like setback height
Right,
table in there.
right.
That was kind of what,
I noticed that.
we were kind of bouncing all these same ideas around on, well, what do you like and how could you make that happen and, you know, that type of stuff. So that was one thing that we had, that you couldn't build the 3-story unless you were set back.
And maybe the 3-story is too much for us.
So one of the things with mixed use is it's supposed to be a merging of both multifamily and commercial, and commercial is a 45 foot. That's where the 3 stories comes from, is the 45 feet of a commercial. So if you had like a commercial on the bottom, or maybe the first 2 stories are commercial and the 3rd story is residential. I mean, that is where the mixed building of 45 feet came from in the mixed use. Just
So like if
Going
you
back to where
look
it
at the new Pearl building.
2
yeah,
stories.
The ground level was commercial and then it had 2 levels of apartments.
Right.
Or condo, a 2-story condo above it.
Right.
I understand that. It also doesn't back up to
So,
residential.
okay, go ahead.
Oh, and then,
You're up.
go for it.
Well, I was gonna go back to kind of talking about that in the information that we sent you. So what we were saying is that if you have what we were proposing in the design standards is if you had a 3-story building, you could have it butted up against a street frontage or other zone other than a mixed residential or single family dwelling. So it could be 20 feet away, it could still be 3 stories, but you'd be butted up against some other use that was not a mixed residential or single family dwelling use or zone. And then if you were abutting, and you're actually adjacent to sharing the same property line as a single family dwelling or mixed residential, we were proposing that you could only go to 2 stories because all single family dwelling across the city can be 2 stories today. So you wouldn't be any taller than what that use would allow you to be today at the 20-foot setback that exists. So you still wouldn't be right on top of them, right on top of your next door neighbor. And then the first line, this A dotted line here, is if you went from the property corner and you went on a 3D plane, so this is the ground, and you went on a 3D plane, you put a line up, it would show you that even at 35 feet back, you still couldn't go 45 feet tall if that's where that line started. Almost every entity that we looked at that had this kind of setback, they started at 10 feet up. So that at that 35 foot back from the property line, you could be 45 feet tall. So I don't know which way is better, I'm not picking.
That's a 12-12 pitch. The roof.
Yeah.
And I gotta be honest with you, for me, 20 and 30 feet's not the kind of heighting I'm talking about. You know,
Yeah.
again, what I think makes our current apartment successful is they're 100 feet from the road, you know?
Because they're on secondary lots.
Yeah, cause they're not on the lot that's in.
I don't know that it would be a welcome, I think we'd be attracting angry hornets in here
So we kind of
Start
picked
building
some
apartments
pictures.
like that.
Shannon and I were doing it. So this is like a 3-story, not suggesting that they'll look like this. We were just looking for stories of kind of examples. So here's a 3-story that butts up against a street. So it wouldn't have to have that, lower down of a 2-story, where it's running into. But it has 2 stories right across the street. And they have single-story garages. And then they have, again, 2 stories and single stories and what have you. Here's another example of that. If you were in a single building where you could have a 3-story adjacent to a 2-story if you shared property lines that we were kind of looking at as proposals.
And this is just mixed use, not mixed residential.
Just mixed use. And so then here's another example of where you could have you know, a 3-story adjacent to a 2-story and a 2-story as well. So I mean, I'm just, it is a, you know, it's always easier for me to see things when I can actually see them.
What are you showing on that bottom right one?
It was again, just some examples. This is actually on a hill, so, you couldn't have this part because it's too tall, but you know, it's the dynamics of having taller and shorter, and it's a sea of residential where you've got several different mixtures of mixed use in these buildings, whereas these are also probably mixed use, but there's houses and apartments, how they've all kind of blended in together, and you've got a mixture going on. Almost all mixed use buildings are way taller than our 3 stories are. Almost all, if you go out and look at examples of pictures, we looked for, you know, trying to get comparables of 3 to 2s.
Yeah.
Most mixed uses, even in small towns, and we were looking at small town kind of uses of this, are taller 4 or 5 stories and 2 or 3 stories as their step downs go. So we're really at the 3 stories and 2 stories it's really a micro of what most other jurisdictions have for that mixed use component. Just, it's really hard to find good examples.
I had to guess the mixed use zone, the way development's going right now, is gonna be almost all apartments. Cause it seems like that's.
Well, that's why we tried to create in the design standards, you made a really good point about the landscaping, and we do have landscaping requirements for the mixed use zone when it's butted up against residential, if it's strictly commercial, or if it's a mixture of commercial and multifamily. We could look at the multifamily component. I don't believe that there's, without looking at it, I didn't look at it today, but without looking at it, I don't think there's a ton of, there is some landscaping there, but not a, you know, solid screen. Because again, we're trying to blend neighborhoods. We're not trying to have that exclusionary, we weren't before, trying to have that kind of exclusionary. We were trying to,
Do you wanna reference it?
no, it's all right. We were trying to kind of include everybody and have everything work together, but we could change that. What we were trying to do though is say that if you're like on Hutter or Highway 95, a commercial corridor, like west of Highway 95 that is part of that mixed use zone, we were trying to say, you know, you need to have some commercial component on the ground floor that you're facing, but also, if you want to have commercial and residential on non-arterials or on arterial streets, that's okay too. I mean, we're not saying you can't have that, but we also need to be cognizant that the commercial world today is not the commercial world that existed 5 or 10 years ago. So to say that all of the ground floor has to be commercial, it seems a little onerous to me, but I'm not sold on this percentage. It's just, I'm trying to be cognizant of the fact that it's not the world that it was 10 years ago. We need to be kind of a little bit understand the market a little bit, not push people into things that don't. Because we don't want to see a commercial that stands open and vacant, because that's just a magnet for things we don't want either.
So what are you seeing then? I mean, 10% seems so really low.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm sold on that either.
I understand that, and I'm not holding you to it either.
Yeah, just someplace to
But
start.
let's say 25% or 50%, would you expect that ground floor is then going to be part residential?
Potentially. Depends on the lay of the land too. So if you're on a hill, you might have the bottom part commercial and or the, you know, whatever, and you might have part of a parking garage. I don't know. Just depends on the lay of the land, the topography. There's lots of choices.
Right.
One of those kind of interesting live-work apartments
Right.
where your
Yeah.
front room is your office or your commercial setting and you live in the back half. I see that a lot.
Where you got a
Oh,
lot
and that would
upstairs
be
for upstairs.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, we just put some graphics together with some of the things that I sent you previously. So like direct and convenient access to schools and parks and services. We don't want to have that fluid, you know, pathway kind of thing, make sure everything connects. This is an example of a park that's kind of in the middle of a complex that, you know, everybody can kind of get to. But you can also, again, if you've got that commercial component, or even if they're private homes, you can have those front private areas as well. Kind of going back and forth. So then, you know, I want to create safe, friendly, and more intimate spaces. So we really liked this one over here with this cool picnic area in the fire pit area back there. And then, having landscaping work with your lighting and create lighted pathways. It's like, I didn't think about that. Because you want that compatibility of building and site design. So these are the design goals. I don't want to write those into, you have to make it this way, because then you don't get this. You just get this. Bleh. So this was again talking about, that ground floor to create that sense of, interaction so that it's different between top and bottom. And I don't want to see, personally, I don't want to see the front grate and then the other three sides. Bleh. I want that architecture to be, a full concept kind of architecture. Those are really awesome buildings. Here's another example of 2 stories that could become 3 stories in a spot. So they don't have to be, they can all work together.
Are you guys comfortable that you can take things like this and actually turn it into city code though?
Hoping. Okay, no, 2 seconds here.
Okay.
So what I was gonna say is that the landscaping, lighting, off-street parking, loading and loading, site, sign, all of those codes are already written, you already have approved those. All we're saying is that we want your project, when you come in the mixed use, to meet those design goals that we listed before. And we talked about the commercial already, we talked about that, we talked about this, you guys talked about that. And then we have some requirements. We noted that we always have 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, but we don't require a garage anywhere in the city for anybody anywhere in the city. But it's important that when you're living in a multifamily, you have some private storage area, and that 90 cubic feet seemed to be pretty much throughout all the codes, 90 to 120 cubic feet, which doesn't seem like much. I couldn't figure out how to get a bicycle in it, which is what I was trying to do.
Oh, that's cubic feet.
90 cubic feet, it's like, yeah, so 3 by 3 by 10, which is like a closet, I think, I don't know. Anyway, I did want to point out that in the mixed use code, we do have some uses that are approved by conditional use permit. So there could be components that are outside of the building that we would allow through that commercial conditional use permit process, just as a process. And we also have been getting a lot of people that are interested in solar energy. And everybody that I saw with a solar energy conversation on their rooftops, it was allowed to be visible. It wasn't required to be hidden because of the angle that it has to get with the sun. Another thing is that property owners associations would be required, whether it's just commercial or just residential or mixed, along with CC&Rs and common area maintenance agreements to make sure that it stays pretty after they, create it. And I distinguish between common space and private open space because in my personal opinion, if you have a 6 dwelling unit or higher, you need to have dedicated personal area for your property. That's how we were kind of playing around with the addition of creating those higher densities, is if you provided a playground like the Lakeview Apartments did, for example, or you added some 1, 2, or 3 common open space items to whatever your private open space was, and you add it up, that creates some of that green space that you may want. In all cases, all the other design standards have to be met. Traffic studies and sewer studies would happen at whatever the higher number was that you were proposing. Just if you're in the mixed use zone, but you're also in the central business district zone and or neighborhood commercial node, you have to meet all of the requirements. One doesn't trump the other one. It has to meet all the codes. And the permit process would follow the same thing that we do for an architectural design review today, which is, show you've met all the design goals, show that you've met the design criteria, and it would be reviewed at the same time as the building permit. So it's not more onerous, but it's just the process.
It doesn't come before us, right?
No, it doesn't come before you. And even if they appeal what staff has determined to meet all of those requirements, those appeals go to city council. So what I'm kind of looking from you is direction as to, what number you want me to start with for a base number. Is it 16 or 17, and they can work it from there? Or is it stay at 15 and they can work it from there? And then if any of those things you'd like to see different, shoot me an email. and I'll tweak it.
We have a thought, right now the base rate is 15.
15 is good to start. I really like you want more density, you add more amenities, because that's good for the city, it's good for the citizens that end up living in those apartments or condos or whatever they become.
The other things, anybody don't like 15? What other question can we answer?
So you like the 15, are you okay with the setbacks that, this mess, which one of those, the A or the B for the setback line?
Could you explain that one more time? I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. So if this piece of property over here is a single family house,
Across the street or right
No.
next door?
just right adjacent,
That's the fence.
on the same property, then the setback for the mixed use from the side yard setback, that's 20 feet. And this is not to scale, it's probably important to note that. So this building, it's one whole building, but this building adjacent at that 20 feet, abutting this line, it can only be 35 feet tall.
Cause that's the same height as a two-story home right now.
Cause that's the same height that would be allowed in the use directly adjacent to it.
Okay.
So then we're saying that when this is 35 feet, this is also 35 feet, that's why this isn't really a square, so that doesn't really work, but anyway, so this is 35 feet here. So at 35 feet back, okay, then if you use the A line, if you start at the property line and the ground, have to go 45 feet back in order to go 45 feet tall. If you shift it like all of our neighbors do, and you move this line up 10 feet, the beginning point, then you can start this building at 35 feet. And I don't have any preference either way, I'm just throwing out opportunities for you guys to kind of figure out.
That 1-to-1 ratio of height to setback seems pretty typical in other city codes.
And that's how we adopted it for the accessory dwelling unit
It is.
in the upstairs of a garage.
And they're
Right.
trying to keep that 45 foot from looking directly across the street into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to not feel like they were towering over you, you know?
Right.
So,
My
I
vote
mean,
is line A.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that works. And what kind of a percentage would you like this to see this? I have no ownership of this number, it's just one of those that came out of some of the code I was looking at. And I was trying to be cognizant of making sure that it's full.
I have no idea.
And that's of the ground floor area, could you base it on frontage as opposed to total square footage?
Yeah. Got an idea?
Well, because we do, I mean, the whole idea is that it has that commercial component.
Maybe 50% of the frontage is commercial, 'cause then you can still put residential behind that, but you
How,
should have.
how deep do you want it?
we're
The-
seeing
the
like.
Oh, yeah, so
concern
somebody just goes
is
10 feet, right?
Yeah, exactly, that's the
We're seeing
concern.
a lot of, the concepts that have come forward, just in concept, no, we don't have any submittals in for review, but just in concept, it's like office space on the bottom, kind of along, and then living behind that and above that.
Yeah.
Because unless it's like on a really great corner or
Yeah.
something, that's just like what Donna was saying, the commercial market is different now.
Right, yeah. It's just
So it's not like, there's not like little shops and stuff like that going in, so I mean, like, somebody can put in a coffee shop or a bakery or something, but how many do you really need? You can't put those in all the mixed use zones, so, so we can do a little more research on that percentage.
And if you have something from your work life that would lend some light on that.
Trying to think.
Yeah, cause we
then
want it to
we're-
make
we're
sense,
not- yeah,
that's
we
why
want
we
it to
talk
work.
so many people.
Well,
Absolutely
thinking
want it
of,
to work.
Like Wallace, you walk down the street in Wallace and there's a bunch of storefronts and then there's stairs that go up to apartments above.
And maybe that works really good for the mixed use that's in in the downtown corridor on smaller lots. Well, CBD has it, yeah, exactly. But maybe that doesn't work for the ones that are on Hutter, cause as and maybe that's the distinction between the MU1 and the MU2. I don't know, I'm looking for feedback, not married to these. I'm just trying to figure out, where to go from here.
I don't have. anybody
Thoughts
different
to
than that.
ponder is what we are here.
All right, so did you get enough from us to get unstuck?
Are you okay? Is that enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we gotta workshop with them too.
So what's in our July 12th meeting?
I don't recall,
What did you say?
what's July
What's
12th?
what's the agenda for July 12th?
Hayden Canyon Phase
yeah.
1E is coming forward,
That's July.
July 12th.
Okay.
Phase 1E.
That's a subdivision, is that what that? what
It is the second preliminary plat of the Hayden Canyon Plan Unit Development.
Okay.
Is it the stuff off of Lancaster or is it?
Yeah.
South of Lancaster, southeast of
South of
Lancaster.
Yeah, it's where they've gutted all the trees.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
drove by it the other day, I was
Yeah.
like,
Across from Newly.
Yes,
Yeah,
It's
across
not
from
up,
Newly.
it's not up on the basalt bluff, it's
No.
down low.
no,
Okay.
yeah,
they have to build some infrastructure.
but now it's a meadow and sidewalk for.
Is there only one hearing?
Yeah.
I think it'll be enough.
Good, I'm sure it will be.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion with you.
I second it.
We're adjourned.